Cool. Welcome to Cloud Unplugged. I am back with Lewis Marshall from Appvia. Again, welcome back.
Hi, yes, thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yes, it is.
You didn't sound very convinced that. It took
It
you
is
a little
early
bit of
morning.
time.
I've only had one coffee, so.
Oh, right. We are probably just going to talk about random different things, I think, in this episode, because we're just catching up and talking about the monopoly of AI and cloud and Elon and Oracle and the 10 billion and Apple and all these other things. So we're just chatting around the facts that Microsoft removed their board seat, or maybe changed their board seat, to be a viewer only rather than voting. I'm not sure what it was, or whether they actually just removed their board seat completely. I need to double check, but basically they were worried about an investigation from the DOJ.
Mm-hmm. I think they've been there before.
Have they?
Sounds familiar.
Does sound very familiar.
Quite old.
I do remember them being in court.
Internet Explorer was a thing, apparently.
Oh, what's that? I've never heard of that. What is Internet Explorer?
It's a little blue icon with an E.
Oh, yeah. Hasn't it been
like,
rebranded?
Looks like the Lego sort of space symbol, with a little space thing going around the E.
With a monopoly of Microsoft operating system and
taken over the
Internet Explorer.
Before the internet.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s.
It worked.
Yes. Did it though? There were some other players.
Yeah. Well, now you've got all of the browsers. Safari on your Apple, Chrome on your Android.
Oh, that's funny. So on your operating system that you use mostly, i.e. your phone, you have a embedded browser that ships with the operating system.
Yeah.
So that's okay now.
Yeah, no, it's fine now. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're over it now.
Okay.
Yeah, we all moved on.
So that's all right. You just ship it with all the control.
Yeah, you just ship it with what you want it to be shipped with. And if anyone wants anything else, then just make it really difficult to go and get all the other things. But now we're on monopolising AI market, yes. So that's what we're all about now.
Yeah, because OpenAI is a thing, because that's easily monopolable. Monopolable? That's definitely
monopolable.
Yes.
Yeah.
OpenAI is a good word for open.
It's how open is OpenAI? Have you used all of the open source of OpenAI?
Yeah, all their GitHub repos. They're really understandable.
Yeah.
It's the main thing, even when they're not open. So you look at the actual OpenAI, which isn't called OpenAI, it's called Meta. So you go to Open Meta and you look at their Llama models, and there's a tiny bit of Python and a big CSV file, which is great. It's just totally open. It's obvious exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
It's called Weights, and you have a look in there and you can debug and understand everything line by line and work out what it's going to say in absolutely every scenario and completely understand it. So regardless of it being open, it's probably the most open thing in the world.
I'm guessing that was sarcasm.
Maybe a tiny little bit.
Yeah, not very open. A non-open AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you saw that basically they removed those. So I think the thing was they invested in, obviously, several AI companies, including, obviously, I think they got like 40% of OpenAI, Microsoft. And then they also invested in Inflection AI and some other one.
So previously fully independent AI startups.
Independent AI startups that's supposed to be there for a competitive market, but obviously they've got a majority in OpenAI. Well, not a majority, but they've got a lot of shares, like 40% in OpenAI. And the valuation of that's obviously insane at the moment. And most people are obviously aware of ChatGPT, and in terms of mind share.
What's Chat one?
It's a way to just chat to a fictitious individual.
Oh, brilliant. So you can say, can we do some role play?
Yeah.
And it obliges.
Yeah. It's basically when no one else wants to listen to you, that's what it's there for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to make and do pretend, then it's the answer.
If you want to just say, summarize this thing, I think most people use it to like summarize this thing because I can't actually be asked
You're trying to
read.
tease me out of
Yeah.
irony and sarcasm.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
try and talk about an actual thing that it can do.
Most of it's used for lazy people that can't be bothered to read loads of things and just want something to summarize it, or they want to basically say, give me, like, how do I explain this thing, or how do I say this thing? And then it puts all these like certain words in that you can tell is OpenAI words and ChatGPT words, and it basically ChatGPT's like sentences and paragraphs, and puts all these like fillers in of like
you
certain
might be
words.
oversimplifying
It puts all these filler
an
words.
algorithm here.
Yeah, an algorithm, but it puts all the same
Suddenly-
types of words in. Apparently, one of the hacks though for this is that you say "stop being so cringe," and if you say that to it, it actually removes all the silly kind of like marketing-esque, supercharge and all these other things that it kind of ends up saying in there. But yeah, sorry, back on topic. So basically, they had they ended up removing their board seat or something. I should double check really, because they're worried about a DOJ investigation. Although there's rumours that it'll probably still happen because of like what's already gone on. And then the CEO of Inflection AI, Mustafa Suleiman,
Indeed, yeah.
he's left. They
Right.
found a replacement for him, but he and his co-founder and some staff all went to Microsoft as well. So they've now left and moved to Microsoft.
Fully owned.
Fully owned, yeah.
So
the competitive landscape of AI, you see.
So the company was basically stripped of the talent.
Well,
Or
we
the
don't
company
really.
was fully
No
owned?
one knows why that decision was made.
I see.
But they now work for Microsoft, presumably maybe to further OpenAI, or maybe look more independent. Who knows? Who knows what the... But anyway, the point being, it's not particularly competitive if you're taking the talent or you're manipulating the market, and,
It is a crazy market. I mean, trying to work out actual utility, what's hype, where are we on the curve of .com bubble and bust. There was always utility, and it would seem that actually bananas.com or whatever you want probably is an actual thing online these days. But at the start of the .com bubble, before it did burst, no one knew. And I think we're very much on that part of the curve at the moment. No one knows. And there is almost certainly utility. In fact,
but do you think that's
protein-
true?
Absolutely, yeah. But it's not
I mean,
necessarily
no
in
one
the
knows from a
generative
technological
space.
perspective, from a technology perspective. But because we have gone through the .com, you've now got a history, and so there's now is an understanding, and there's also
But it's a different
markets, different
monopolies,
monopolies,
different technology. You can't compare, the .com startup of like one set of protocols about how the internet works and its commercialization to non-algorithmic software 0.2 in a way. It's literally trained with data, non-algorithms. I mean, the algorithms are such a small component of it. They're absolutely crucial component, and they're very, detailed matrices maps that are linked together in very specific ways, but they're the micro part of it. It's the data that makes it real, and the wiring up is less ifs, thens and buts, but more of an architecture of data flow, of matrices, and it's basically a vector
predicting
space
the next thing,
of
basically.
yeah,
isn't it? It's all about prediction and accuracy of what
it is. If
the
you
next.
get shown the search space and enough examples, then it can generalize the type of input data to output data. Now, because it's all data, the inputs, the outputs, and the weights, it's just information. It's just you've got to flow the right information through these architectures to get something useful out, which is not an algorithmic. It's not something you debug in a very typical sense. You debug it in a very different way, with more data and more analysis and changing of those architectural shapes of how the data flows in a way, I guess. It's more like pneumatics than programming. But I guess understanding what the utility is of that, there's concrete utility that you can see where models are applied to very specific problem domains where you can measure the output. You can know what good looks like. And in those domains, like protein folding, you can absolutely smash it out the park and predict all biological proteins and move science forward. Masses, absolutely crazy things are now possible because of this technology. But at the same time, you show it the whole internet, what could possibly go wrong?
Do you use it? Are you using AI, any AI code-wise, development-wise?
I develop, and so I'm exposed to ChatGPT embedded in Visual Studio Code, Microsoft's
owned by Microsoft.
GitHub, which is also my Microsoft.
Right.
It's all just, I'm just a Microsoft fanboy, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And initially it was mind-bogglingly amazing and incredible. But on a day-to-day basis, you realise exactly how flawed and what you can and can't use it for. And through time, you realise how much undirected search without understanding, when you're conversing with just some weird set of parameters in weird lizard brain space, you can't direct the answer. I mean, you can direct it a little bit. I write a comment before I start typing that describes
what
it is I'm trying to achieve, and then it can have varying levels of success, but there's no understanding there. It becomes clear. There's certainly no reasoning capability for it to decipher what's good and to test and validate. So that's left down to me to de-regress the code that's been generated.
But I think that's because, though, to be fair, the code you work on, because it's on like the platform engineering space, is by nature complicated, because a lot of that is integration orientated work. So as in like you're integrating to third parties.
I mean, I'll take the general compliment of platform engineering, but actually I would say it's certainly not complicated, and there's really much more complicated algorithmic code that people write on a day-to-day basis.
I
don't know whether
in the grand schemes, but I mean for this to generate code,
I would imagine it would be more directed and closer, because there's more examples of people trying to bash their head against platform space and look up SDKs and just get the same things done time and time again in lots of ways. There's really good examples for nearly all of the things that are capable, because you're basically trying to take existing APIs and mash them together in a more structured, sensible way that you think might add some value, hopefully. And I'm dividing the whole thing. That's not the intention. But yeah, I don't know. It's creepy in its initial.
But what is it that's making it not? What's the limitation then? So you put a comment in, and you're like, right, okay, this is kind of what I'm wanting to achieve. Then it goes off, produces some code off the back of your comment, and you're like, that's not really.
It will hallucinate. It will make up stuff, and it will make up method names and things that sound applicable. So it will wrap your question in a method name and say, method that does the thing you've asked. Open bracket, send us CTX and a thing here. And you're like, doesn't really help. And it will make, inexplicable weird bugs and brilliant. It's best for very, very specific closed questions that you can ask of it. When you're writing unit tests and you've got some examples and the context happens to be loaded for you of the current file or the entire package or the area of code that you're working on, it can become very useful and it can do the repeat things that you would certainly want. But it can also insert some tricky little bugs.
So if you weren't a experienced dev,
it could drive you
It'd probably create more work maybe than just
absolutely.
learning, because you're basically correcting something else's work, which is harder than almost like writing your own work.
I'm certain there are people that are better at using it, and there are certain
like prompt engineering it into
absolutely. And there's also probably better products which are prompt engineering on your behalf.
Not non-Microsoft ones. Oh, maybe they're invested.
Maybe
by
there's
Microsoft.
some other companies.
I think they're owned by
they allowed?
Microsoft.
I mean,
they're not allowed.
If you're using GitHub and you're using Microsoft's code editor and you're generating code to talk to Microsoft's cloud, is that allowed?
Yeah, that's definitely allowed.
Oh, that's allowed. Okay. So if you're using
only
Microsoft
on a Microsoft device
to talk to Google Cloud, is that allowed?
Not allowed.
No,
that's
okay.
not allowed. That's
right.
Gemini.
What about using
AI
Gemini?
Yeah, that's allowed.
As a plug-in to Visual Studio
on a
Code.
Chromebook.
On a Chromebook.
On a Chromebook, yeah. Using that to terminal into something in the cloud, in GCP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you want is
that's
terminal access in cloud to your AIs.
Allowed. Yeah.
Nothing could go wrong there.
No. That's what you're allowed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're saying that you're kind of using it to a little bit to kind of like bootstrap bits of functions here and there, and to kind of like, I guess, just give you a bit of a head start. But then, or in terms of like tests, if you've got something concrete and it can like actually understand it, then it will come up with something a bit closer to reality. Than
I think understanding the limitations through repetitive use of these things get you a little bit closer to a bit of utility, understanding what it's completely not going to be able to do, and recognise that it's not understanding at a high level, because it's not reasoning, it's applying
and do you think
a lot of information.
Looking at all the things you're trying to do all the time, is in when it's being trained, it's obviously every time you're like, that's not right. Does it know it's not right? Are you saying this isn't right?
I think this is the whole fascinating area where
is it
it's
learning to get
when the examples of what good looks like are taught by concrete reality. You know, if it was,
but presumably that is what's happening if everyone's using it.
Yeah, but you're saying concrete reality is just our subjective reality. And that's
oh no!
Now a bit metaphysical.
This is like now getting into physics and philosophy all at the same time.
If what people say is gathered as the ultimate truth, then yeah, sure, it's learning. But is that truth?
Well, I guess,
or if you had a measured reality in a closed problem domain like chemistry, then you can understand that if it was connected to a lab and had actual data back from that lab and wasn't allowed any other data, no hypotheses, just reality, then it could predict reality potentially in a lot more directed way.
Yeah, but it hasn't. I guess AI hasn't just been born out of some biological, like, I don't know, process that's occurred where it's like taken in loads of inputs of like physics and biology.
It can be.
But it's been driven by humans to get outcomes that humans want, right?
I suppose there's
it's already.
Which data do you show it is the point I'm trying to make.
But who decides on whether that was useful is going to be the person that's driving it, presumably, not like some like meta.
I guess there's a big difference between generative models and large language models and the architecture that we've come to know from ChatGPT and what OpenAI are most famous for. And then the architectures that are highly specific, showing very specific data about how to auto-level a drone or how to do one bit of physics really well. And they can predict extraordinarily quickly almost exactly what's required in those fields and in those particular scenarios. And I think biology shows that there is more than one architecture at play in your actual brain. You have, a visual cortex, which is not the same as your frontal cortex, which is not the same as your other parts of your brain, and they are highly specific circuits, if you like, architectures of different neural nets, which share some connectivity and some inputs and outputs between each other to make them multimodal. And I think that sort of hints at a much more fascinating future where if you had data trained in your specific company with very specific architectures for the problem domain that your company operates in,
true.
then that's going to be highly, I can mix biology and efficacious.
Based, I guess, on the
results.
data of which you've processed and understand. I guess if it's unanimously purist and it isn't like some jaded data set or something on the research. Then I can kind of see, or like solving certain problems, like you were saying,
absolutely,
biology problems or chemistry problems.
Large language models you could sort of see as a small superset, but it would be much better if you had different corpuses of information on certain topics that they could be, shared different training.
But you still didn't answer my question about you and your code.
So. It's useful. It is
Has it
changing.
got better? Have you noticed it even improve, or has it just stayed the same since you've been using it?
It hasn't got massively different. But there again, I'm only using Copilot because the integrations, it was early.
Like native.
First, native, built in, and there seems to be a reasonable amount of pressure to get the job done, which is, a useful for fitness thing for your daily work, which leads you not to sort of spend most of your time investigating what other models. But I'm sure there are better models these days. Anthropic apparently have got much more specific truth-seeking models.
Truth-seeking models?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, how do you train based on, if you have data for passing the bar exam or mathematical Olympian exam, Google and Anthropic and others are getting models trained in specific areas and showing that they can achieve brilliant results. Now, I guess the jury is out on whether pun with the bar. But anyway, the jury is out is whether if you show it the entire manual and all the possible examples, whether that's just interpolation and whether there's really any extrapolation, any real learnings, understanding of and ability to come up with novel answers. I did hear doesn't seem to be the case from personal experience yet.
There was another startup, a legal startup that was using AI, and I believe they had to hire a bunch of lawyers to basically end up doing the legals in the end because it couldn't actually really do it. It's just basically to get them through whilst it's being trained. It's quite a complicated, like, go and create me a legal document, for my software. I want to, for a reseller or whatever it's going to be. Or
well, I guess the issue with that is the length of a legal document is going to be bigger than any context, even with the latest Gemini, with the whole internet in their head at any one moment. It's impossible to cover an entire legal document because they're always going to be bigger than the internet and never understandable.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's probably a perfect use of Gen AI. Just come up with loads of text that no one's ever going to read. Perfect.
I just wait until we get sued, and then we'll challenge whether or not that was even legal.
It is an interesting area though, because of the corporate takeover and buyout in this specific domain, and the parallels with other domains, and whether it's a bubble and whether when it gets down to it, is it capable of actually doing and actually delivering and taking us out of this bubble?
Well, there's different parts, isn't there? There's Microsoft themselves who've obviously gone off and invested, and NVIDIA. They're not on their own really. And then there's companies, other startups that maybe not necessarily directly in the same type of space of AI. Like we just said, like a legal company that's trying to maybe do legal documents or whatever. So within that bubble, I'm sure they're getting a good surface area coverage of the different types of companies that are starting up to try and solve problems using AI. So from a advantage point, like they're definitely going to have an advantage point on just markets in general, and what markets are using what bits of AI, and who's doing something interesting, and what startups are kind of coming up with innovative ideas to solve innovative problems using AI.
I think the real challenge here is to democratize the training and the availability to. Well, I mean, Meta's recent announcements and their Llama models, their was it a 403 billion parameter largest open source model available, and it's smaller 7 billion and 3 billion models that you could run locally all the way up to in your own big cloud rented space. I guess the challenge is not having general models, because a general model, however big, however many parameters, and what is the intersection of general and specific? Because if for most AI cases, the training is going to involve a feedback loop of knowing what good is, and if that's
a very specific thing,
and if that can't be generated itself, if you have to do it by hand, then you're going to have a real challenge in training sufficiently to be really having learnt enough predictive power in a closed enough arena that it's going to be truly useful. And I think companies that can work out how to not get entirely general language applied to YAML or to I don't know, code generation or whatever it is, because I think that's going to be a huge problem, and you're just basically there's a very thin area of actual success or differentiation between you and every other person using the same model to do a chat thing for a medical insurance firm with a couple of documents loaded in context and a bit of RAG where it can just index and use a search engine as a tool. It's like, is it capable of reasoning enough to actually get to the right answer, or is it literally just going to be spaffing out some nonsense? And the further end of that, of actually having a highly directed specific training set which is specific to your domain, and being able to take maybe an open source model that is general enough to understand language and be directed towards the bridging of a human interface, the ultimate UX, and the highly specific closed problem that you deal with as your business.
I think it's a little bit question. I mean,
that's
that sounds
up in the air. It feels. It
sounds a bit cynical, I suppose, but like Meta trying to come across as purist, on some Deliveroo AI, and it just doesn't really wash.
They can't look at your data on WhatsApp.
I mean, honestly,
it's impossible.
It just seems so
Facebook
ridiculous.
Is cleaner than it's the best place in the world.
Yeah,
there's never been any problems on social media.
No, they've not had
platforms
any, not been in trouble at all for anything, really.
No. Although they did have a court case.
But
Supreme Court hearing or some such.
Are you using all of because you use Apple? You're an Apple person and a bit of a Google person.
I'm not an Apple person.
You are. You are, as in you've got Apple devices, right?
I have an Apple TV.
Yeah,
for sure.
And you've got googly stuff as well. So you
in between a few of the platforms, and my son needs Microsoft because he has to play games.
Oh, right. So you've got the Microsoft for the games. You've got the Google for the home.
Google for a Google Home
You've
ecosystem.
Got Apple for your TV.
You have to be able to ask the TV to turn on and off.
Yeah, you need to get the TV to turn on and off.
You do.
God forbid you have to find the remote, turn it on yourself, or your lights.
Oh no, you can't do when you've got your hands full and you're cooking. I know
it is hard to put things down and walk over.
It's a first world issue. It's
a really
problem.
I refuse to do it.
Absolutely,
I'll just stand there in the dark until someone else comes in and turns the
lights are cycled.
Yeah. I mean, it is a must.
It's an interesting area you touch on, though, that you can have all this automation and all these things and ecosystems. Yet, can you have a assistant that can actually help systematically and precisely every time? No. And if you had a Gen AI on it, would it just flash the lights on and off in red at midnight just because you asked a question?
Also, what happens when it like malfunctions or something?
This is it.
It's like doing random.
I wouldn't let a Gen AI loose on any of my documents at work or at home.
Oh, did you see about that?
I've got a spreadsheet, Gemini. Just play with all the fields and all the calculations for me.
There was some guy that put a tweet out because he was using some alpha feature on Google that somehow triggered some permissions issue that then gave AI permissions to his actual Drive documents, even though he didn't willingly give it access. And basically you had access to his like tax and tax calculations and things like that. But he didn't realise, and actually when he looked, all the permissions were set to not have access. But it was like obviously some feature that did something, obviously like behind the scenes in Google land.
Some part. That's subsection 15, page 35 of the document when you sign on to use Google Drive. Yeah,
page 35.
It's obvious.
Of the 600th chapter of the other document that's in there that says it can.
That's now generated by some model anyway. So
I think he tweeted and they were like really confused and they were trying to look into how that's even happened because obviously it's a bit of a trust and permissions issue. But yeah, it was quite easy for it to accidentally get access to all of his Drive data and start indexing it all.
I think.
Well, not really easy to do it. Trained on it, I guess.
I think it's an area where, as an individual, it's almost impossible to trust.
So it's got access to your photos because it does that, right?
But it's like you're anthropomorphizing maybe a tiny bit. Has it got access?
No, Google. I mean, no, not it. I mean, Google. Google has access to your photos. You've got a Google phone.
Yeah, but
I presume you're putting same as Apple phones. They've all been uploaded. All these images. Some of them will be all kinds of images.
So I guess the marketing that Apple use with Apple Intelligence, because AI stands for that, obviously, of having highly specific directed models with closed access to your individual data on demand, with models running just for your data. Where's the training end and the context begin? I guess is the issue, because then how much context can you fit to be applicable and how much actually needs to be trained? So the general stuff is obviously training data, and then the specific stuff is going to be context data. And if you've got a lot of documents in an organization or as an individual, like your photos, document, similar stuff at the end, where's the boundaries of access? And if the Google AI has access to search.
Definitely has access to mine.
Yeah, all my Google photos. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
you can ask questions. It does.
You can ask questions of it.
Can you? What can you say? Like,
show me all the pictures of me in a hat or snowboarding or whatever. And the general stuff, it works.
Right.
And
I don't think I'm really basic. I think I just like.
It's really
you're right.
Actually,
I did.
Show me pictures of my number plate whenever I'm in a car park and I can't remember my number plate. Don't need to get out of the car to look at the number plate. That would be ridiculous. Exactly. You ask your Google Photos, what's my number plate? But it's not specific, and it will show you all the number plates of all the cars. Luckily, don't generally take photos. Don't. But I mean, there seems to be specific nice surprises of like turn on my bedside light. And it knows that a synonym for mine is Lewis, somehow in my profile maybe, and my light device happens to be called Lewis's bedside light, and it can get that. So that was a bit of a surprise how did it do that? And then, the data's there, but how much is context and how much is training, and what's the pre-trained, like which bit? I don't know. Where's the perimeter start and where's it end? It's almost impossible to know.
3 of the million Lewis's lights all turned on across the world. Across the world.
It's like, the
like,
world will not end.
All Lewis's lights keep going on and off.
The world won't end because everyone gets turned to paper clips. It will end because all the power stations in all the world and all the Lewis's.
See, it's a thing. I like deliberately don't get into because I know if I do, it will become normalized for me. Like the same with like tapping your phone for payments, right?
Yeah.
There's not much in it get your card out your wallet and tap, get your phone out, and you kind of then tap. But now I never really used to use my phone to tap. Now I always use my phone to tap. I never will get something out of my wallet. Like that but it saved me like a fraction of a second.
I will remember this when I don't know, say a product owner in a company says, we want less clicks. We want to do it quicker. And it's like, seriously, can't they be bothered just to learn some YAML and do it?
Well, I mean, it's different. I suppose what I'm saying is if I use it to something that's I mean it's a personal thing. If I allow myself to get lazy, right, and I don't think for myself, that's a choice I'm entering into, right? So it's like, how much do I want to go down that path where I normalize not thinking for myself, and normalize like doing things like not getting up and turning a light on, which is like just in some ways is good to be active, right? It's good to be active. I'm not saying necessarily
to have a light bulb and a power station at your whim. How very dare you? I mean, you're using a switch. I mean, it's all levels of the same thing.
It is all levels. Exactly, that's my point. It is all levels of the same thing, but you normalise it. Like the light switch was normalised.
I suppose it's what you grew up with.
Maybe I don't even need to stand up anymore. Maybe I don't even really need to. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you put it through that, you'll normalise like not having to move or think. And I think at that point is like I'm kind of deliberately not putting myself in that place.
I suppose you're correct in the
because I'll normalise
like,
it. It'll become
looking up
normal.
Information, understanding information, having critical thought, and being worried about what you see as news, and to actively search and not doom scroll. Yes, I agree 100%. If I actually scrolled on, or an algorithm says, just go on, scroll on to the next one, without me deciding what the next one was, that I find having
what about
agency.
Your light turning on because it knows it's you when you enter your house because it's detected your phone?
That I don't feel like I'm losing any cognitive ability from something just being generally useful. When I come into the house, it's dark after a holiday and I've got a handful of luggage and I'm tripping over some shoes and the lights come on. It's like, that's genuinely useful. I don't see that as
like someone running in front
away.
of you, but excuse me, sir, let me just get that for you and like turn your light on for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for that.
Well, you have okay. If you've got systems at home, and that's better.
As in to that degree, right? As in like it's supporting something when you got your hands. But what about when you've not got your hands full at all and you just literally it's just laziness?
I don't feel like I'm getting a great workout from that light switch anyway.
Well, you definitely not getting any workout at this point. You just those light switches. They're probably the dustiest light switches ever known to man. I mean, you have to clean them, I suppose. Is that the effort?
Just frivolous things in every bit of normal modern life.
Yeah.
There's a hell of a lot of it. And I embrace like all of modern life in part. And there's a whole bunch of things. I don't worry about those minutiae things. I don't feel.
I feel like it's a path, though, isn't it? It's like
there's a path on some things.
There's small iterative elements of like climatizing to something and normalizing. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's like Deliveroo. I never would have even imagined that food coming to my door. Bear in mind, there's lots of restaurants at the end of my road. I mean, there is, but I will still go online and choose. Like it's when you get used to doing something and normalize it. Yeah. Like before, you'd have to just walk to the end of your street. I know it sounds very old school, but actually leaving your house and walking and speaking to another person,
really good, absolutely.
I mean, it's just
healthy. Actually recognizing that making food and choosing food, and having social interactions to get the food, to make the food, to eat with people. Massively valuable, and you've almost got to relearn things that used to be chores and to recognize not to use things just out of convenience. But I don't see there's a
I'm not saying I'm not suggesting it's wrong, but I'm not judging it. I'm just saying I'm saying I'm personally not. I'm restraining myself deliberately.
That's your control.
My own personal my own control to not. Because I know if I enter it, a bit like the Deliveroo thing, or a bit like an Uber, right? It's like if it's there, I'll probably take it. If I get used to taking it, then I'll normalise it, and then it becomes like I know it's an option. I know it's more of an option.
I think there's two ways of looking at it. One is abstinent sort of denial of any progression that could
I'm fine for it to progress.
any progression that could take away good behaviour.
Yeah.
Like, but knowing which ones do and don't, I think that's harder. And actually,
well, it's a choice, personal choice, isn't it?
It
you
is,
just need to decide it for you. I don't think there's like
absolutely.
There's not a generalised good or bad. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to avoid here. I'm just saying it's personal. It's up to you. If you decide to grow your own vegetables,
But
I don't berate them and be like, go to the supermarket. Why are you being so
purist?
purist?
You've got to recognise some things are, much better progress. Like paying on your phone has got two-factor auth. It's a lot more secure than a card. It's a better replacement than a card. But people feel more comfortable with cards, and they feel, oh, no, that's too convenient because now I don't need to have my wallet with me. So they see that artificially as a negative thing.
Yeah.
And actually, it's negative to have cards with mag strips on, stored in a way that can be stolen or easily accessible, and
Also,
don't
manufacturing and the plastics of it.
The e-cards would
lots,
be much better.
Lots of it.
If you've got one device and it's got multi-factors for a level of authentication, your fingerprint or your face, that's better.
Paying with your face, yeah.
Paying with your face.
Yeah.
That's what it should come down. You should get rid of the phone.
Get rid of your phone.
Just like
what beeping?
When you go around Amazon Fresh, and you
the AI will look and see how much you want it,
and you end up with
how much does this guy want it? And then someone that wants it more will come along, and it'll work, and they'll get it, and you'll be like, "Damn it!"
And a robot will be at your house with all your bags for things that you didn't.
Would you do that if you could have a robot that could carry your bags? Would you get one?
Would I have a robot chef in the house that could?
Would you have a robot chef? Oh, just general robot assistant that would do cleaning, chefing, maybe babysitting. Maybe would you do it? You're like, oh, I'm just going to nip out and we're going to go for a nice meal. Would you? This is totally getting off topic of the Microsoft. I know we're going totally off on the tangent now. but would you do it?
But it's a hard one to wrestle with because I don't feel that is a bazillion miles off, and maybe not within our lifetime. It's certainly within my son's lifetime. I feel like the iRobot, not the dystopian takeover and downfall of everything, but a future where a lot more automation is in our lives.
You strike me as someone. This is not to be.
I would embrace it, yeah.
But you strike me as somebody that would have what do they call those Hoovers that go around.
We did have a Roomba.
A Roomba, that's it.
And it was great, and I genuinely, I saw the utility, and not having to do that chore felt great. And we've got a lot of hardwood and a big ground floor that's all open plan, so yeah, it worked great until my wife decided that maybe it's chipping some of the paintwork, and then we were never allowed one again.
Oh,
right. So I don't know. I feel like as much I'm almost fascinated by the future, and I want to see it try.
Giant Roombas that are like human-esque,
like sucking people out of the streets because they didn't buy Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that feels like the right outcome for sure.
Yeah, and it'd be like saying, I've installed Internet Explorer on your.
But were you approved to go non-Microsoft and have?
I hope you don't mind, Lewis, but I've just deployed loads of your code into our cloud.
I've been trained on all of your cooking.
Yeah.
And every time you open the door and turn the lights on, that's your habits.
And there'll be quotes,
to the cloud.
Bill Gates quotes when you wake up. Little quotes to motivate you in life. It'll come out with.
How dark can it get?
Yeah. So, but I guess the trajectory we're on, which is like the monopolization, which is what we kind of started with. Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of devices already, and you're kind of utilizing the features, I guess, to the point. I do a bit, but not so much. Not out of, some instances I deliberately will like stem away from things because I'm just like, I know if I go down those paths and it starts making my life easier, I might just get used to it, and I don't really I want to be able to think for myself, and I think it's healthy. I personal, but at the same time, the more access it has generally to like learn about like a model on Lewis, where it's kind of modeling you and then learning about you, and you're kind of training it about what you do and don't like, whether it's right or wrong, what you're in the mood for, how you speak, your bedside light, which one's yours, all these things that are like starting to happen as it starts to learn. I don't really know if I trust certain monopolizations of all of that to be happening. I don't know what I mean by trust though either.
It's very hard to understand what trust is in this world of flowing information.
Yeah, exactly. Of which you already know you're pretty compromised. I mean, you've got...
Yeah, I mean, you've had cameras in your pockets.
Yeah, exactly.
On your phone with microphones following you around way before even the Home Assistants. Yeah. Since the turn of the century, we've been...
But they don't listen to anything. That's
Ever,
no. I won't get any adverts.
They have some software that will put on a little light to tell you exactly the only times it will ever be listening. Yeah. And it guarantee will not be updating your search results.
Never does.
Ever other time. Yeah. It's never listened in and uncannily come up with perfect search results because it definitely doesn't listen.
It does not listen. So... but all those things, I guess.
Do we put our tinfoil hat on
but
now? But
they've gone to court over these things. Like all these things have they've been fined. Apple, Google, they get fined often. They go to court and just take the fine, right? A breach. Yeah. Breach of
the
trust.
Fines
breach.
are
not a big enough reason, not deter.
Proportional to the potential societal impact.
Exactly.
One-off little... The levers
multi-billion/trillions, I guess, at that point.
I guess both the levers aren't big enough to hold them to account, but neither are the organisations seen as trustworthy enough or have teeth enough. So, there's literally no one in the game who can provide the best outcome other than us as individuals, making those individual choices to decide
I think that's basically
whether to have as much agency, to embrace it. I almost think having skin in the game of, even if it's just usage and understanding by testing and trying, rather than trying to shut yourself away and pretend it's not happening. I think it is happening, and to have exposure and to use it as much as possible, and then to learn those good behaviours and to decide when not to doom scroll, and when absolutely to make sure you're training that algorithm, because it's damn useful for it to know when your bedside light is your bedside light and not your wife's bedside light. That's the most important thing in life.
That is the most important thing.
It's pretty vital.
Yeah, we're already partially there, from the abacus to the calculator on your phone, and not having to work sums out in your own mind, and you just get the calculator out. You're just I don't know, actually. I don't know. I can't do the math anymore because I'm not doing math anymore.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Learning to redo maths and to try and do mental arithmetic, or to actually remember anything ever. Yeah, to not become completely. I mean, I find I do need to use a to-do list or write things down almost for everything all the time. I feel like that part of me has always been slightly forgetful, and so I've kind of always, even with pen, although I couldn't read it back if I used a pen now, even back in the day.
Can you write?
I can't really write, no, not anymore.
You've got the ability to write, but you can type.
Yeah, just about. Well, talk, I can definitely talk.
You can talk,
and it can dictate.
Yeah. So some of the main faculties have remained.
Just a few. I'm aiming for the Wall-E chair on the spaceship with a straw. Or
where basically your devices are telling your family members how you feel and what you're thinking. Yeah.
Basically, Lewis, if I could actually just stay
Lewis isn't happy with you today, and you don't really have to speak. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah,
you just a mute.
Yeah, I'll just be.
Yeah, you just be mute.
I just have a headset on, asleep.
Yeah, just in some other universe.
Yeah, that's best. That's basically what you got to try it early, double down, and then get to that utopia as quick as possible. So you upload
the vegetation utopia, a vegetative state where all things are done for you and all thinking's done for you. That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
It's the place to be.
I find
the only thing we'll know when it's happened is your
loop
light doing an SOS. So,
get me out, help. Wake me
the
up.
only thing that we'd ever be like, that's really weird. Lucy's bedroom light is doing the SOS thing. Do you think we need to do something?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel with a son and knowing, the world he's grown up with and being part of him growing up to have access to devices from a young age with parent controls for what he would say is too late in his life, but then relinquishing them and reasoning and realizing how to have enough agency in this world and learning how to teach that to another person. It feels like something that we're all going through at all times, and to be part of it I think is great.
So you're not worried about the monopoly then? Is that
I
the
can
conclusion?
go to
Is
the
that
health
how we
club.
can sum up? You are all for
My just total optimistic oblivion to any possible negative.
absolutely dominate that market. We don't care. If you want me to use Internet, but I'll use it. If you want me to use Chrome, I'm
because
using
I'm
it.
told.
Yeah,
I'm
you
told.
just tell me.
Yeah,
and
I will use GitHub and
make
and
my
all the
life
things.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Manufacture the lights if you need to. I don't really mind if they're all Microsoft lights. Doesn't
I
really
just
at this
shine
point.
them into my eyeballs and
Who
pretend they're
cares?
lights when they're not even there.
Yeah,
be
Microsoft prepared
best.
food. I mean, fridge freezers, all of it, all the devices.
I think you're being unfair.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an investigation into them anyway. I think it's a bit suspect, all this stuff.
It feels like all of the companies.
We've kind of reached such a large domination of certain organisations. It's kind of crazy, really.
It does feel like the organisations that we'd want to hold them to account, from the smallest regulatory local, office all the way up to the United Nations. People don't seem to be able to hold other people to account.
Well, what's
for
wild a bit
anything.
about it all is you go to government and they're using the cloud. So they're probably in one of them, probably are maybe using Microsoft for identity and Office 365, all those things. You go home and then there'd be devices like Apple calling out to ChatGPT. I think you were saying sometimes it'll do random searches for you, or you're using it generally. There'll be other devices, could be the Xbox or whatever that you probably start to use at home playing games, and it's maybe at some point going to start using it. And so, and there'll be the servers, the hosting, you've got your websites from work, you've got files at work, it's your work life. So it's not so much just the one market where it's just they're just in the AI game.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that they're in
Across
they're across all of them, and that in itself, when you start to, own so much of the landscape from end to end as a giant org.
Which organisation do you think owns?
I don't know really.
The majority or the most worrying size
I'm
of the
not
market?
sure. I guess
OpenAI with Microsoft, but Microsoft with the operating systems and identity and cloud. That's quite a big chunk.
Microsoft is a big
actually
chunk.
On market cap, they're the biggest organisation now.
From an enterprise perspective, they
flipping
are,
between them and
Amazon own the most still
Apple
market
and Google
share
are up there
for cloud.
for cloud for sure.
And then it's Microsoft second.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess
Google with devices and
Google
personal
devices. Apple for devices as well, personal.
Absolutely, there's a lot of tech that is owned, and your data and cloud, with the Google and Apple as well. It's hard to draw the lines about the affiliations and how far that data goes. The whole advertising with Google and data. I mean, to navigate the world's data or to own it.
Yeah, I mean they are
just have it.
They are masters at the data, aren't they? Really, that's what they've been known for historically.
Apple being a vanguard of privacy, and perfection in that space. Obviously, nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about.
They don't tell any organisation what they can and when they can have utility in that ecosystem at all, and they don't make any profit from any other one at all.
Yeah.
so that's good.
I guess that's the point, isn't it, of it all? So it'll be interesting, but I don't know what difference it will make. So even if the DOJ investigates or whatever, or some investigation, like what difference does it make in the end? I guess really, like you're saying, it's like has the horse bolted?
Has anyone really got teeth?
Yeah. What is
really
teeth? Because you don't want to
change in the world,
cause impact financially necessarily to the large organisation, because obviously they're employing people and it's a large organisation. At the same time, you also need things to be fair and competitive, and other people to actually be able to compete in the market, and it not everything be owned.
And you certainly want safety measures and controls for families, and but you don't also want a Disney World that's fake. You want 100%. All of the things, and this is it. This is why it almost certainly comes down to personal ways of navigating. I mean, the world has never been safe. You've always been able to hit your head on the ground with or without a helmet, or people can use knives for cooking or not. So I guess nothing's really changed. I guess the biggest issue is the pace of overall change and how much the future can dramatically change, and if anyone's got any control over any of that. So you've turned me from a complete utopian.
No, good things, and everything has to be like, all we're doing is like representing the facts, and they're the only facts we kind of have. Monopolization really so far, but then also what's going on in the markets overall, and I'm sure we'll see it from all of them. Nvidia, Apple, all these. There'll be always monopolization attempts, really, to try and get the share price up right at the end, right, and dominate as much as you possibly can. That's just the motivation, isn't it?
I think it's changing rapidly. As things become capable in surprising ways. They're completely incapable, and one part of a curve of progress hasn't played out, as maybe quite a lot of optimists thought when ChatGPT came out and OpenAI stormed onto the scene and Microsoft made their buy, and then we thought, end of jobs in another 6 months to a year, or maybe 5 or 10. It's still not the game is still to play for, and we've got a lot more navigating of trust and market share and outcomes to be had yet.
Cool. Well, there we go. There we have it.
Another mad ramble.
Exactly. We went all over the place on this episode, but anyway, good to chat about it all. Just even though
didn't necessarily have a closed topic, but
no, I think it's just a bit open-ended, isn't it? Because it's all still open-ended.
Absolutely.
But cool. Thanks for coming on. And I shall speak to everyone soon. Bye.
Cool. Bye.